I often described early on in my career that I was laying on my back punching up at the world. And I think in reading your story and understanding your background, it was how can I go and take from the world what I should be getting, because I know I can do it. I know I can
Mhm.
help. And it was the wrong way.
Yeah.
When I transformed, it was a moment of understanding I'm here to serve. And
Yeah.
the more that I transform myself into a servant leader, helping others, the more attracted people
Yeah.
were to the mission
Yeah.
and the more impact I was actually making, to your point. But it all came from something that was always there, and that
Yeah.
was building relationships with the human. It was always caring and being present and
Yeah.
doing something that was great. And I read your story and kind of understand you had this bristly, maybe aggressiveness about you in the past that you've
Yeah.
now refined, like that great piece of furniture you referenced earlier, right?
Well, here's what's interesting is you were sharing that and I was thinking and I was, here's a question for you, Scott. Do you know your love language? Do you know what your number one love language is?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back and forth between physical touch and words of affirmation,
Okay.
but as Gary Chapman says,
Yeah.
all men are physical touch. So we can throw that one out and
Okay.
just say
Yeah. Yeah.
words of affirmation are
Okay.
my love language.
So for me, it's service. And what's interesting about that, and kind of like what you mentioned, like this idea of sitting down there and punching at everything, for me, it was being a bulldozer. It was being intense that I'm just going to push myself through whatever wall. And the challenge with that is you can have success doing that. And if success is meaning that you close deals, that you make money, you get promotions, you get whatever, because our world has a love affair with intense people. And we have a love affair not because it's a good relationship, because we get just enough from it that we think, oh, that's what it's about. And as you were sharing and never having really this thought and just kind of that difference, right? You sitting punching up there. Okay, great. For me, it was pushing through walls. It was very much both of them were seeking validation. Hey, am I worthwhile? Do I have value to bring? And I think the interesting piece as I think about my love language being service is I had to slow down. I had to, kind of the African proverb is one goes fast, many go far. I had to learn how to, as I've told some people this that get it, and intense people, is I had to learn how to get lazy. I had to learn how to slow down to go at the pace of others around me. And what that created was a connection, those relationships. And to me, it's all about connection. Am I willing to slow down, can connect with people? Well, the interesting thing about that is when you slow down to connect with people, you can actually start to serve them. You can start to put your arm around them and have physical touch, and it's not dragging people. And so, this idea of really saying, all right, how do I let the world see the best of me is I have to stop trying to prove whatever thing I'm trying to get through or trying to get over. And I, so often I read books and it's funny. I just went through a training last week and they were talking about the fear of rejection and the fear of failure and how we define that and what that means. And for me, it's very much rejection of not being worthy, of not having value. And as the person was going on and talk about how to reframe your mind and teach yourselves different things, no different than I think probably, when you had Dr. Wood on and he talked about the tip and just, all right, that's a great piece of it. But I think I heard this from him and I very much agree. Instead of always looking for the solution, right? We could have a, say in a business and we have say we run a plumbing business. Okay. And we have a bunch of trucks on the road and every 2 days there's a truck coming in with flat tires. And we're like, dude, why are we fixing all these flat tires? And instead of saying, all right, well, we need to go get Kevlar tires because those will hold up. And so that way we're not, we're spending twice as much, 3 times as much, and maybe they won't go as flat. It's like, hey, maybe let's actually go and say, are you driving across, nail strips? Are you, leaving? Are there nails somewhere that are constantly causing these flat tires? And what I find in no difference, kind of this idea, this disconnection in relationships, we say, well, how do I need to change my mindset so I value the relationship more? Well, what if we do this? What understand what the insecurity or the fear is that's causing us to create a barrier in relationships. And that's one of the things that I've really focused on, what I lead my community through, what I talk about in keynotes are the walls that we put up around ourselves from insecurity that make a barrier in the relationships we have, because it'll affect your kids, your spouse, anyone you work with. And to me, that's been the great transformation, is not saying, okay, how do I come to grips with myself, but understanding the insecurity that was the root of it all. And here's the amazing thing. Every single person living, breathing, walking on this earth, you can think about we'll talk about John. John has insecurities. He does. I've seen it come out. I know it. And, it's any leader has it. And it's saying, all right, if we can come to grips with our own or understand how someone else is manifesting theirs, we can enhance the relationship, build a connection, and then we can do so much more.
Yeah, it's huge. Insecurity is a really interesting topic, and it's one I know you spend a lot of time on.
Yeah.
And the more you identify your own insecurities, the more self-aware you are in those moments when you need to actually activate that next level of execution. And what I mean by that is, I think just self-awareness in relationships can be very valuable. The more self-aware you are, think about marriage. How many people get married and they genuinely believe in the first couple years of their marriage that that person that they married is there to serve them? Like I feel loved this way. Why do you not do this for me? Why do you not do this for me? You used to do this for me.
Yeah.
And this language becomes the predominant conversation versus actually spending the time to connect and understand, looking at our insecurities and saying, what are we actually afraid of?
Yeah.
Are you afraid that they're going to leave? Are you afraid that they're going to not see you the same way? Are you afraid, like going through that level and actually establishing that self-awareness to love ourselves, to actually then serve the other human, changes our lives, our relationships. And I know it's been extremely impactful to you because, you talk often about how it's changed your relationships in your family, in your life, even with the kids.
Yeah.
I mean, how impactful that can be.
Well, I think one of the biggest things that people maybe miss out on is there's a difference between loving yourself and also, I would say it goes along with, if you love yourself, then you're willing to give yourself grace. And it's also accepting who and what you are. And there's a part of that the difference is saying, oh, this is who I am, deal with it. Or, oh, this is who I am. And so how do I make sure that the best of me comes out in service of others? And I think that big difference in, well, this is just who I am, Scott, deal with it mentality, which we see in people, as opposed to, okay, I understand that, when my insecurity gets pressed, I get super intense. And so if I can recognize, all right, dude, I'm getting a little intense, and say, hey, I'm sorry, excuse me, my intensity is showing, let me dial back a little bit. And that takes some tremendous vulnerability. And this is what I've learned. The leaders that are able to do that, and when I say leaders, I mean any person, whether it's everyone's a leader. The person that's willing to say, hey, excuse me, my insecurity is showing, my insecurity is being touched, ends up being way more powerful, and powerful because they become influential. Not that they usurp this tremendous control over someone, but we become influential when we connect with people. And our vulnerabilities allow us to connect, because then people can say, oh, I can see that you're human and I'm human, and we can do this together.
Yeah, it's amazing how humility still works today as a great unifier and connector, right?
Yeah.
The more someone understands that, I think a lot of times we start off with a story and maybe we're giving someone advice or guiding them on something. But something that I always try to do is I always try to come back and say, hey, listen, I want to tell you that I fail at this all the time. Like, I can help you with these 5 things, and I feel very confident that I can coach you through it. I can help you through it. And you know how I'm confident? Because I failed at it a bunch of times. I've seen the result. I know the right thing. I always look at Coach K, right? Coach K is one of the greatest basketball coaches of all time. And he wasn't one of the best basketball players of all time. But darn it, he knew exactly what he needed to do. He knew how to get the intensity out of his players. He knew how to create a brotherhood. and something that's now become a movement and a legacy. Duke
Yeah.
basketball is
Yeah.
so intense and special. And he also was one heck of an X's and O's coach. And when you look at that, he obviously was able to execute, and us knowing some of our own insecurities, our own challenges, can help us really take that message to a greater level. But that vulnerability does connect. If you like clips like this, I have a similar clip here. And if you want to watch the full video, click here.